tonight's City Council meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, could you please do us a favor and take the roll?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mayor Jean Goss,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Edward Garcia,
Present.
Councilmember Rachel Arizmendi.
Present virtually.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly Krebs. Here. And Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Pledge of Allegiance and Inspiration will be led by Councilmember Krebs tonight.
Please stand. Please begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, I can't let the ubiquitous palindrome date of 2/22/22, which also falls on a Tuesday, a City Council Tuesday at that, go by unnoticed. It's a palindrome, as many of you probably know, because it's the same read both forward and backwards. And I learned today that it's ubiquitous because it's a palindrome whether the date is written in the U.S. or the non-U.S. format. Besides making an otherwise fairly ordinary Tuesday something more interesting and giving newlyweds and new parents an easy way to remember an anniversary or birth date, numerologists are giving today a special meaning because of the proliferation of twos. Apparently in numerology, twos signify harmony and cooperation. So whether or not you subscribe to numerology, I think it's a good reminder to strive for and celebrate harmony and cooperation in the world, as it seems in very short supply these days. So I'd like to recognize the Sierra Madre Citizen Group for its efforts to foster local cooperation and harmony to beautify the Sierra Madre Post Office. If you'd like to donate to that effort, they're going to re-landscape and put in native plants in front of the post office for everyone's enjoyment and education. If you'd like to donate, you can contact the Sierra Madre Community Foundation about donating to the post office landscape project. And I also wanted to thank the council for being thoughtful and responsible members who are also committed to respectful, cooperative leadership. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Krebs. Okay, let's move on. Take a look at our agenda for tonight and looking for a motion for approval.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. It is unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Arizmendi. And now we move on to approval for reading resolutions and ordinances. Could I get a motion for approval of that, please?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Again, we have a unanimous decision. And, turn to Mr. City Attorney to discuss the closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. The first report out is going to be from the closed session on February 15th. The first agenda item was anticipated litigation under Government Code Section 54956.9, Subdivision B. No reportable action was taken. The second agenda item was conference with real property negotiator under Government Code Section 54956.8.
Sorry to interrupt, but with these masks on, you really have to speak loudly and into the mic, okay? I can't hear you very well here either, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The second agenda item was conference with real property negotiator, Government Code Section 54956.8. For that agenda item, the council unanimously voted to authorize the city manager, Jose Reynoso, to negotiate for the sale of 505 North Hermosa Avenue. And I'll also be reporting on the closed sessions that were agendized for today. The first agenda item was conference with real property negotiator, Government Code Section 4956.8. No reportable action was taken. The second agenda item was anticipated litigation under Government Code Section 54956.9 Subdivision B. Again, no reportable action was taken. And the third agenda item was threats to public services or facilities under Government Code Section 54957. Again, no reportable action was taken. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. And that takes us to our last meeting's minutes. If you've had a look, I'd like a motion for approval or amendment.
Mr. Mayor, I provided some small editorial comments, just correcting some typos in it.
Okay, and
So-
City Clerk has them?
Yes, I
Okay.
sent them to her earlier today, I
Okay,
believe.
so we'll consider it amended to those comments. Are there any other changes? So is there a motion to approve it with those amendments?
I move to approve with Councilmember Parker's amendments.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Did you get Councilmember Arizmendi? Were you?
It's an aye.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I heard that, but that's good. Okay, that passes. And Mayor and City Council reports. Who would like to go first?
I have no report, Mr. Mayor.
So mine will be quick. So as usual, in between meetings, there's a Clean Power Alliance meeting, nothing to report out of that. And I also attended the Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Commission meeting last Wednesday. And we had a really good dialogue about the Wildlife Watch program, which will be coming forward towards us, as well as some Earth Day celebrations, which will be on April 23rd. And then, Analyst Carlson, there was a third thing on the agenda, and I'm not remembering what it was. Can you remind me?
Yeah, we had a brief discussion on the net energy metering question.
Thank you, yes. And so we talked about that the solar panels and the net energy metering, and the decision on that was that we were going to do a little bit more research, weren't we?
Yeah, we're gonna have a representative from Edison attend our next meeting and give both sides of the story, kinda.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I have to report.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. Any other reports?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
so nothing to report regarding city business. I was tapped to be the liaison for the Planning Commission meeting that was supposed to occur last Thursday, and that did not happen due to lack of quorum. But I have a couple quick announcements regarding things going on in the city, specifically youth sports. As I stated last time, that this coming Saturday will be the Sierra Madre Little League opening day parade from 8 o'clock from Taylor's Market down to Sierra Vista Park. And then starting at 9 o'clock will be, I will mention that our own Lisa Carlson is the Grand Marshal for that parade. And then from 9 o'clock till 10 o'clock will be opening ceremonies. Tonight are the first games. There is a Garcia playing for the Sierra Madre Red Sox right now as we speak, playing the Sierra Madre Cubs. And then we're going to have our own, I guess it would be a Sierra Madre Boulevard series, the Dodgers versus the Angels, happening after that. And I'll also mention that on March 6th, which I believe is a Sunday, Sierra Madre Girls Softball Association will be having their opening day in parade.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Certainly.
Councilmember Arizmendi.
Mr. Mayor, I have no report today.
Okay, thank you. Just a brief report. This morning I had the true pleasure and privilege to give a kind of speech about the condition of our city to the Rotary Club over at Hart Park House, and it was very well received. I received a very warm reception, and I thank all the members of Rotary for that. I also wanted to thank City Manager Reynoso, Fire Chief Bartlett, Captain Amos from the Fire Department, Tevin Vung, and City Clerk Laura Aguilar for being there in a supportive role. I really appreciate that very much. I have a kind of busy week lined up. I'm also going to be at that Little League opening day. They've been asked to make a few comments. And what was the other thing? Well, I'm just got a brain freeze. I think I'll just forget it. That's the end of City Council reports. So we want to move on now to public comment on non-agenda items, things that are not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes to make a comment to us. If you want to come up to the podium, we prefer that you have filled out a card first. If you haven't, our city clerk here has cards that can be filled out.
Mr. Mayor, I have one card received for an item not on the agenda from Scott Oliver.
Mr. Mayor, you do also have public comment from Zoom.
On Zoom?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. Let's hear what Mr. Oliver has to say first, and we'll get to Zoom in a little bit.
Okay. Today, just before this meeting, I got this postcard in my mail. I'm on Carter. I read it. After 5 years of mis- and disinformation, I think all Americans are aware of misleading comments and information that's given out as truthful, how dangerous it can be. What I'm asking you, the City Council, because of this project, because of the magnitude and the fact that you are directly involved, our City Council is basically going to say yay or nay, depending on other situations. And I am, as described with this very small group of people, that these people are asking the city not to sign this petition. So I'm one of the small, and I can't speak for anybody but myself, but I would be willing to subject myself, and I would think the people that I'm organized with would be willing to subject whatever information we put out to be subject to the scrutiny of the City Council, so they can determine what is actually honest and what is misinformation and disinformation. Because this basically says we as a city are going to commit a crime by discriminating against a religious organization, prevent them from doing their work for God. And that is not what this project is about. So if you read this, if you haven't gotten it, I got it just an hour before the meeting, please, this is not true. And it shouldn't be going to the residents. And then the people that aren't, I was out getting signatures on Sunday. Man, I'll tell you, people walking by, hey, I ain't got time. They'll have time when they're waiting at the stop signs for 5 minutes at each stop sign. They'll have time then. But by that time, we're all going to be saying, wow, we should have done something. We shouldn't have let this happen. And see, that's what we're all trying to do so that we don't have to say that. So please, if you do you have this? Would you like mine? Do you know what I'm talking about? And can you, as our City Council, our representatives, can you afford some scrutiny to keep this fair and honest? Can you? Can I get an answer, or
Okay, well, the public comment is not an opportunity for a dialogue.
I totally apologize.
So, but we will get back to, we'll have somebody in staff get back to you. I would like, Mr. Oliver, I would like to remind you that we have scheduled a meeting next Tuesday at the middle schools, here Madre Middle School. It's a joint meeting between the Planning Commission and the City Council. It's an opportunity for you and anyone else in the community to come in and give us input, and we strongly encourage you to be there.
Totally understand, and that's the process. This,
Right.
I think, needs to be addressed as a separate issue. That's my take.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You are talking about...
State your name, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Nancy Beckham. My address is 337 North Lima Street. The order of business tonight is to adopt the Wildlife Management Plan and Direction for Implementation. So this is close, but it's not exact, because I looked through the entire agenda that you sent, which is 45 or 48 pages. You forgot the endangered species. There are 2 of them up there. You did do a good job on covering the cougar. You forgot Thompson's long-eared bat. The little bat lives in the trees up at Bailey Canyon and at the Madre de la Rosa.
So can I just interrupt you right there,
Sure.
Mr. Beckham? So you want this to be included in the discussion about the wildlife?
But It's not on your agenda.
Well, then, at that time, when we deal with that agenda item, could you bring this back up
Sure.
to us? We'll be happy to.
Happy to. Just trying to do the right thing.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, anyone else for public comment on non-agenda items? Okay, we do have people on Zoom, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. We have one individual that would like to comment on that.
Please do so.
Hi, this is Susan Newhausen. I don't know how to get my video on. I live at the top of the Grove Street. And so, as we were discussing earlier, in the spirit of respectful cooperative leadership and of your respectful constituents, we're requesting a town hall meeting where we actually meet with you, the city council, and have an opportunity to ask you questions and have you respond to questions. And so this hasn't been done yet. I know that Mayor Goss has said, well, there have been public opportunities, but those opportunities have never been a question and answer with you all, and we really think it's important, considering what's going on with the contemplated Meadows project. And towards that end, I know that there is this meeting this coming Tuesday, but again, that's not an opportunity for us to ask questions and get answers from you all. I mean, we're hoping that we can ask you questions that you then ask New Urban West. But I'm also a little even concerned about that, given, as you just heard from Mr. Oliver, about the misinformation and the blatant lies, actually, that they're putting out. I actually don't think it's appropriate for New Urban West to do a presentation. I think what's appropriate, and I'm actually looking forward, are the questions of you and the Planning Commission to them. So, again, I would really like to request that you do an open town hall meeting for questions and answers, because as you know, this is just us making comments with no response. So thank you. You know, we can do it anytime. You guys can stagger when you can be there. I think a 2-hour session on a weekend would be great out in the park. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Newhausen. Are there other comments on Zoom? Are there any further comments on non-agenda items? Okay. Oh, do we have emails, Madam City Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, 4 emails were received by city staff regarding items not on the agenda. All emails were forwarded to the city council for consideration and review and uploaded to the city's website for transparency and public access.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Okay, so we now move on to presentations. And we're going to have an update by the Sierra Madre Historical Preservation Society on the Richardson House restoration.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. My name is Leslie Ziff, 229 North Baldwin.
And I'm John Capocha, 91 West Highland.
And we represent the Historical Society of Sierra Madre. So we want to give you a little presentation of the importance of our museums, and specifically the Richardson House. Go ahead. The Richardson House, as we know it, is the oldest house in Sierra Madre. And with Lizzie's Trail Inn, it serves as our 2 historical museums. The back room and kitchen is in an advanced state of disrepair, and restoration of this historic component of the building is beyond the means and capability of the Historical Preservation Society. So we are asking the city to fund and manage the restoration. I'm very glad that you were all there a couple of months ago and were able to see what needs to be restored. Go ahead, James. Let me tell you a little bit about Richardson and the house. John Richardson was a stonecutter from Vermont. He came across the plains in a covered wagon with his wife Betsy and 2 children. And the Historical Society has been doing some extra research on him and have found that he actually came in the 1850s. He started building the 2 houses, identical, in the 1860s, early 1860s. In 1876, he obtained a government claim to 150 acres just west of the Little Santa Anita Canyon on a deed signed by Ulysses S. Grant, and we actually have that up in the in the Richardson House. He built a ranch with 2 cabins, one which is the Richardson House. We believe that he and Levi probably built the Richardson House. The Richardsons ran a large beekeeping operation and would travel to Los Angeles by wagon to sell their honey and their firewood. In 1879, John deeded his property to his son Levi. John died in 1884 and is buried in our Pioneer Cemetery. Lizzie later on purchased both properties in the early 1920s.
Okay, the problem. The back room is rotting and it's falling apart. About 7 years ago, I participated in a soft demolition with, a couple other members of Sierra Madre. And what we were doing was trying to uncover historical aspects and to determine the extent of the degradation and the needed repairs. So what we found, we didn't find anything that interesting. We're hoping by lifting some floorboards and taking off some of the siding on the wall that maybe there'd be something great hidden in there, but we didn't really find anything historical. But what we did find is that we have severe structural damage. Now, mind you, this was 7 years ago. So for years, the Sierra Madre Historical Preservation Society, their goal was to repair and restore the room. But basically, I joined the board this year, and after some discussion, it's just clearly beyond our ability to do a project like that, and it's really not within the scope of our primary mission, and it's just way beyond our capacity to do something because, and obviously for 7 years after we were talking about this and getting everybody excited about it, absolutely nothing has been done. So,
why is it important to Sierra Madre? So the house is one of the few museums in existence in California that is operating in its original structure with the original historic content, in many cases, still there. It's a living history museum. The Richardson House is the oldest house in Sierra Madre. It was the home of one of Sierra Madre's very first residents. This back room incorporates the history of prohibition within our city. Lizzie used the room as a second kitchen to house her supplies and do some of her cooking, and most importantly, to house the still that they had back there so that she could sell whiskey to her customers during Prohibition. As a result of the Sierra Madre Historical Preservation Society's efforts in the past decade, our museums are heavily visited on Saturdays. We have a lot of tours going on every Saturday when we're able to be open, and we have hikers coming in all the time. The museums have a viable teen docent program, and we bring through at least 7 fourth grade classes a year from our local Sierra Madre schools, in addition to some of the public and private tours that we do with children and with adults. Jane?
Okay, I just want to comment also, you don't need to go back to the other slide, but the activities that the Historical and Preservation Society is doing is what I believe is appropriate, what they should be doing, which is inviting people into the museums and staffing the museums and sharing this tremendous history that we have with people coming by, and especially on the Mount Wilson Trail. And it really is impressive how many people come through there and are now learning something about Sierra Madre. So, I mean, we even have trouble just getting enough people just to staff that valuable resource there. And that's what we should be doing, is promoting the history, not managing a construction project. But anyway, the current MOU that we have between the city and our historical society states, quote, "The city as its sole expense agrees to perform all structural and exterior repairs and maintenance which city as at its sole discretion deems necessary. As of last year, the informal agreement we had where the city was basically giving us $10,000 per year to the Historical Society, which contributed to the maintenance that, small things that we can manage, like the painting of the Richardson House and Lizzie's, reinforcing the Richardson House porch, the railing and stairs, and a lot of just repair of Lizzie's, including some of the board and bat siding and the railings around it. And I do want to say is that, there's been a lot of volunteer effort in the past here, like the painting of the Richardson House itself. Myself and Bob Spears basically painted that house about 7 years ago. And I also worked really hard painting the entire inside with some help from the Rotary Club. They were very helpful in doing that. But we basically went through and painted everything and, just fixed up a lot of stuff, got a few of the windows working and things like that. And now, because of that, we're able to share the history with Sierra Madre citizens. So this isn't all about just trying to get some money. I mean, we do have volunteer effort that is actively working on this. But again, this is about a huge project that is beyond our scope.
Yeah. We've also replaced 4 of the windows that have been cracked or damaged over the years. So the Historical Society went ahead and replaced that, and we added lighting, extra lighting into Lizzie's. So we updated the lighting in there too. So the next slides are some pictures to show you some of the things that have been done. This is the Richardson House front porch. It's been repainted. The porch has been repainted. All of the woodwork, the railings have been redone and reinforced. And the underneath of the porch and the house have been reinforced. Next.
Okay, this one is, this is a picture. This is not Depression era Appalachia. This is Sierra Madre with a clear view from Turtle Park looking west. This is what the back part of the house looks like that needs to be restored. And again, what we have here is demolition by neglect. It's just falling apart. It's just getting worse and worse. And something needs to be done about it. So we'll come to that a little bit more at our conclusion, what some of the options might be. But again, this is just a view for everybody watching. I mean, this actually exists on city property in Sierra Madre.
Next. This is the inside of that room that you were just looking at. And what the area that you're looking at is where the still used to be, just for your knowledge. Next one. This is behind the back. This is an added area that was a storage area. This part has a cement floor already.
So you can see also some of the problems here is the stud spacing is rather wide, and those studs are actually all rotting at the bottom.
Next. Another close-up of the boards of the side wall and the back wall.
Yeah,
and the floor.
Obviously daylight coming through. It's not.
Next. Another view, the same back room. And then this is looking out from, I'm standing where the still used to be, looking out to the door going towards Lizzie. This is, we had Lizzie's painted. I just wanted to kind of show you some of these pictures. This is when we painted Lizzie's last year. And these are some of the things. We had to tear out boards and replace them because they were rotting. And then we replaced and fixed the boards and then painted. And then the stairs and porch that we had to redo. And then we also got new shades and new drapes for the Richardson House. We got a couch donated. We've had a rocking chair donated, and one of our board members is fixing it so that it dates to the period of the house. Next. And we just kind of wanted to show you my pickle barrel group. These are the guys that you'll find out there on the porch every Saturday. They're a mixture of hikers, bikers, and people that have tall tales, true tales, and just kind of a fun time to spend on Saturdays. Next. And then this is one of the school groups that comes for a tour.
Okay, yeah, in conclusion, preservation of Sierra Madre's historic assets is important to the city. And we want to keep the exterior and historic elements representative here. If we restore the room, it will greatly enhance the aesthetic value of the building and will allow the Historical Society to create a replica of the kitchen and the whiskey still in there, which I think is a big attraction. I mean, everybody loves that story about how Lizzie was basically creating moonshine back there for her customers. So we're asking that the City Council formally agendize our request to fund the restoration in the next budget cycle and begin restoration as soon as possible. And I would ask that when you do this on, I would ask that the city and the staff report just present any alternatives, and we're willing to discuss how we can partially fund this. I mean, funding a complete thing is again beyond our capability, but we do have some money set aside for this project that we've been building up over the years too. So I just want to say is I think, if you're willing to agendize this, what we would like to not see is that the can be kicked down the road. Something has to be done. Again, it is in the process of demolition by neglect. So if we can't do anything, then that would be one option, is just demolish the back half of that building and let it go. We think that would be a serious mistake. I really believe that the city can afford to take care of its historical assets, and we believe this is an important asset that should be restored. So again, just thank you for considering our request, and we hopefully will have some more discussion about this.
Could you guys take a couple questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, before we do any questions, I'm told that we had some people in Zoom who wanted to make comment on non-agenda items, and they're backed up, and apparently we didn't recognize that they were there. So when this presentation is concluded, I would like to go back and give them an opportunity to comment.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I'll advise our
Okay.
our staff.
Are there any questions? Councilmember Krebs?
Do you have any sense of magnitude in terms of the amount that would be requested or be required to perform the restoration?
No, I certainly don't. I mean, I can't even begin to, this is again, where nobody here has experience with construction projects like that. And just looking at it, I'm just not sure what it would take to bring it up to code or meet the state historical standards. So we need some help with this. I think probably I would suggest that you're going to have to hire a consultant or something like that to help with this.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So when we were up there in December, thank you for the tour, Ms. Ziff. That was lovely and very informative. It's not on this presentation, but I know one of the areas of concern, apart from the back of the Richardson House, was the roof of Lizzie's Inn. My question is, has that been repaired? The roof been repaired as we're kind of maybe have another rainy season coming up upon us, and there's an oak tree growing into that building? Has that been talked about, and is that part of the whole thing that you're asking as well?
Well, it's a definite concern. The roof has not yet been repaired. The city has covered it with plastic, and I got a roof person up there to talk to me about what would be some suggestions to slur it or how to fix it, the best way. So we've kind of looked at it, but nothing has been done on it. The tree is again leaning on the covering over the porch. So we really need to look at down the road what are we going to do eventually for that problem. But no, the city has not tackled that at all.
So City Manager Reynoso or maybe Director Semino, as far as the roof's concerned, I feel like that's, if it's leaking, that is gonna exacerbate issues, especially for Lizzie's. Does that have to wait until the next budget cycle, or we have funds within our budget to potentially take care of the roof?
I'm gonna defer that to Director Semino if he's here.
Are there funds available? As you know, we work on a zero-based budget, and it is not available that way, but there could be ways that we could find fundings to help in that process. The roof itself isn't as old as we all think it is. It's more of the building being pushed, which is causing issues with the leakage from the top. So there's more to look at in there, and that's kind of why we've left it with plastic until we can figure out how we can make major repairs.
That's very informative. Thank you, Director Semino.
Councilmember Arizmendi, do you have any questions?
No questions, but, you know, just a comment is that, given that it's city property, I'd like to see how we can address it, and I'm sure we'll have discussion on that at a future time.
Yes, I intend to agendize this, so for a future council meeting. Mr. Parkhurst, Councilmember Parkhurst.
So, can you give an idea of kind of chunking this, kind of what needs to be done, and kind of time frame? Are there things that are, you know, we have to do right now? Like, you know, the foundation, I think, is a key example. That's got to be taken care of, or we lose the whole thing. Are there things that can we stage this at all, or is it kind of like, you know, it's been 7 years, we kind of need to take all of it right now, and any idea kind of how long, you know, you've seen it, how long you think a construction project on this might look based on your knowledge?
Well, my own opinion, and I'm not an expert, but I'm just kind of a handy sort of guy who swings a hammer every now and then, but I really don't know enough to design a solution to it. But my opinion is that basically the back part of the building is just an add-on onto the house. I don't personally think that the house itself is at any risk of more delay. It's just that the attached part that we're concerned about is just getting worse and worse. So in my opinion, the world's not going to end if you didn't do anything for 1 or 2 more years, other than it's just going to fall apart more and more. It's going to get worse. And you know, it's, who knows what could happen if walls start collapsing on the outside. Then it might be a little more urgent. But you know, if we get to that point, then it's probably you're going to have to just tear it off to make it safe. So we certainly don't want to get to that point.
Yeah.
We have had a contractor come in to look at it and say that the foundation would probably be the first step, and then reinforcing and fixing the walls around that bottom foundation, and then going up from there. So that's kind of a starting point.
I just have 2 comments. Have you considered a working still? It's a Sierra Madre brand whiskey. I think that's all everybody wins on that.
I see. A whiskey tasting with the new still in the new add-on. Yes.
And I want to congratulate you, Ms. Ziff, on getting a 2-time mayor down here to do your bidding for you. Very shrewd, very shrewd. But it's great to see you, John. It's great to see you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you all.
Great to be. Thank you for allowing us to make our case here.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. And we have another presentation now by Frontier oh, wait, I'm sorry. We have other people who apparently we missed first time around who wanted to comment on non-agenda items via Zoom. So I'd like to bring them in one at a time, if we could.
Mr. Mayor, we do have one person.
One? Okay.
They're patched in and ready to go.
Okay, great.
Okay, you can hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Hey, my mic at work at the office isn't a very good one, but I'm Catherine Addy, 727 Skyland Drive. I'm at the Upper Canyon. 2 things. First, I just want to thank city staff, our police department, and Fish and Wildlife
and our neighborhood watch people like Katrina for last week's Zoom presentation on our bear situations and the bears and the problems that we're having up in the Upper Canyon and the canyon and in town. So thank you very much for having that meeting. I'm really excited that you're going to be introducing the wildlife plan and perhaps even a wildlife watch, like patterned after neighborhood watch. I'm very excited about that. So thank you. But my other hat tonight is a lot more fun, and that is that I'm on the One Book, One City committee with the library, and it's been very, very successful. The book is, as you may know, is Matt Haig's The Midnight Library. In conjunction with that, we've had a series of programs, great committee, and it's been very successful. It's kind of a difficult time when we can't meet in person. But the finale is coming up on February 28th at 7 p.m. at the Playhouse. And it's complimentary. I don't know how many of you attended a couple years ago Cafe Vita when they had an on-stage reading for One Book, One City, but we had to turn people away. It was standing room only. Don't tell the fire department. But I want to take 1 minute and just read to you what this staged one-act play is about. It's called The World's Strongest Librarian, and it's a play about the power of books, muscles, and human kindness. Josh is a children's librarian at a poor public library facing a huge budget crisis. He's also a powerlifter pumping iron in the library basement and running a video blog about young adults and children's books, weight, and life. Kids flock to his unconventional story time and check out books by the dozen. All but one kid, that is, a loner named Mr. T, who has the loud tics of Tourette syndrome. Slowly, Josh and Mr. T form a friendship, and finally Mr. T ventures to Josh's basement gym, where a friendship is born. The stakes go up when the town says the library needs to close for monetary reasons. This hits Josh and the kids hard and leads them to staging a 60s-inspired read-in rather than letting their library be shut down. At the play's end, a Sixth Sense-like ending reveals the true identity of Mr. T. The world's strongest librarian will get kids pumped up to read, to work themselves into shape, and especially to be kind to others. So again, folks, that's February 28th, 7 p.m. It's complimentary at the Playhouse. That's a Monday night, and it's their off-the-page staged reading. And thank you. I hope you all can attend.
Thank you, Ms. Addy. Are there other comments on Zoom? Let's double check on non-agenda items.
We do not have any other comments or anything we're having.
Just so everyone who's here and who's watching, why are we using Zoom? This is officially a hybrid meeting, keeping in mind the sensitivity residents still have about COVID, and we wanted to give people an opportunity to be here. And obviously a lot of people are comfortable being here, but we also wanted to give an opportunity for people to participate even if they weren't comfortable being here. So that's why we've gone to the trouble. My compliments to staff for being able to pull this off as a technical matter. Okay, now we'll move on to our next presentation, and that is by Frontier Communications on a citywide, very exciting, a citywide fiber network availability.
Honorable Mayor, thank you for allowing me to come, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is Sean Murphy. I'm the Network Operations Supervisor for Frontier Communications. My primary focus is to come out, talk to the cities, let them know what we're bringing in. Frontier's embarked on is building Gigabit America. As we've started this project up again, we started off with just 1 gig service, up and down. Effective today, I'm gratefully excited to be able to tell everybody we're now doing a 2 gig up and down service. over a fiber optic network. So again, this is all about fiber optic. It's the newest, best thing out there as far as for communications purposes. Frontier does it where we are strictly one fiber, one customer. We don't share any bandwidth with anybody else. Your neighbors don't share your bandwidth. It's what you get is what you get. So you can order 500 over 500 all the way up to 2 gig over 2 gig. So Frontier's plan with Sierra Madre is we're going to build approximately 74 to 7,700 customers in the community, and this is the initial start off for us. There are additional areas that border Sierra Madre that we will be adding into it, but that's going to be over time. But our initial submittals for permits and plans are going to cover at least 7,400 to 7,700 homeowners and small business units. We already have fiber in the community on our TLS services, to where they're direct bandwidths from our central offices to businesses primarily. So one of the nice facts about the fiber optic system is, again, we don't share anything with another customer. Your fiber is your fiber from our office to the hub in the field to the homeowner or the business unit. We don't share their bandwidth, which makes a huge difference. It's also there's no lag. You can't slow it down. It's light, so it's really good. So again, like I was saying, it's 100% fiber optic from our central office all the way to the homeowner itself or the small business owner. We've seen this in many locations where rental properties, homeowners, their property values go up in communities in which we've already expanded the service into, and it's in service. It opens up new venues for homeowners, especially now in the current situation we have today, COVID. A lot of people have to work from home, hybrid services, meetings, and kids going to school, some days online, some days in classrooms. So it really helps. Also, you have the little kids where they're not going to school yet, but they want to be able to watch their shows and do their games, and it just really helps because it helps the parents. They can do what they need to. The kids can be in class, and you can also be watching TV and streaming other services, and there's no lag, no delay. One of the big things that we want to let everybody know is, yes, the speeds are amazing. Reliability, due to the fact that it's a passive network, it's strictly light. You don't have the issues that we've had with the copper plant over the decades. Many of these locations, the cable's been in the air for over 40 years. And this is we're finally doing an upgrade into the community. We're bringing up, new technology, and it's just, that's the beauty with fiber. You don't get the interference from wind, from rain, from, storms. You don't have any of those issues. I think that's probably one of the biggest and best things for, the homeowners, because let's be honest, it's frustrating when your services go down. I'm not saying fiber optic's perfect. Things still happen, can cause issues, but it's a much more reliable service. Again, one of the good things with the fiber optic network is Frontier's noticed the need to bring its prices down. So we have brought our services to where they're more comparable, more in tune with, getting it out to the residents. So, we've been really lucky here in Sierra Madre, and I have to say thank you to the council, thank you to the Public Works Department. Getting our permits, I've worked with Chris, I've worked with Jose via the phone. Getting our permits has been absolutely amazing. It's been very, very pleasant to deal with the city of Sierra Madre for that. And one of the things that, I need to make sure I share with the community and the council is this is a partnership. This is not Frontiers coming in, doing an upgrade, and then you're not going to have, anybody to reach out to. I presented Chris and Jose a letter where it's actually got my contact and the Director of Construction's contact that you can reach out to us at any point in time. So, we're really striving to build that relationship back with the cities and the communities. So, a lot of, we're here in Sierra Madre, we have employees that live here in the city, they shop here, they live here, and do business here. And, by us doing this, coming in, partnering up with the communities and the cities, it just shows our willingness to be part of the community. We want that long-term goal, long-term relationship with the cities. So, typically, this is just a quick rundown. It kind of just goes through and explains it real simply how we get the fiber to the homeowner and to the small business units. It leaves our central office. From there, it goes out to a hub out in the public right of way. All of our hubs are mounted on pads on the ground. Then it goes from there to a terminal, and then from the terminal there would be a drop run from the terminal at the pole over to the homeowner's house, and then from there it would get converted back over to copper inside the home. That's the only copper left in the network. So we cut out miles and miles of copper plant. A lot less chances of having issues and degradation. So this is an example of the hubs that we use. This is an example of a 432. This is a pad mounted. We've stopped doing the pads and we've started utilizing a 3-foot by 3-foot tub. And that's so we can actually put some of the splices in the ground so they're not seen up in the air on the poles. So, but this is typical of what you would see in the public right of way in the neighborhoods. This is what an aerial splice location looks like. So, because 98% of Sierra Madre is an aerial plant build, you would see these splice cases in the city. And right now, as it stands, $79.99 a month is what we're offering the 1 gig over 1 gig service. So it's amazing. 2 gig, they're still, I believe, we're offering it at $99 a month. So it's very competitive, and again, the speeds are absolutely phenomenal. The benefits it's going to bring to the community, to the homeowners, and to the businesses is very much the newest technology, and it's the best out there. So I want to say thank you for letting me come in, giving the council a quick rundown on what we're doing and why you're going to see so many Frontier trucks out in the community, and our partners that we have doing work for us as well.
Thank you for the presentation. Are you open to some questions?
Yes, I am, sir.
And who would like to go first? Okay, Member Parkhurst.
So you said you've got 7,400 residences or SFUs, SBUs. So where and what will be covered and what won't be covered in Sierra Madre?
Majority of Sierra Madre is covered. I would have to get a map put together for you, and I could pass that along and get it back to the council to give you a better defined area of what's actually going to have service actually set up and going through. Most of the areas that aren't going to have that right now are the HOA communities, because we have to have a different communication with the HOAs, and we have to talk to them and get the homeowners associations to sign off on us coming in and upgrading the networks there. So most of this is now the aerial plant and all the customers that are currently fed that way.
So you'd be able to get all the way up into our canyon for the people that are up there?
I would have to look and see, because I'm sorry I can't answer that specifically, but I can get that answer for you and get back to you.
And so I went on your website looking, and it doesn't look like you're available yet. When will you guys have stuff available in, you said there's trucks out there. Can you give us an idea of timeline and kind of when the availability will be?
Most of Sierra Madre we've got projects that have already started, and it's looking like we're trying to complete what we already have permitted. We're looking to try and have those completed around the September, October timeframe.
So you'll start signing up customers in September or October?
No, we'll have customers being able to get service within the next 30 to 60 days, because we already have projects that are in build right now, and then we'll be continuing to expand out from there.
So how will our residents know when things will be available? Because it's not available right now on your website.
Yep. So what happens is, when the construction begins, we have the companies that are doing the work for us that go out. They do a flyer in the neighborhood they're going to be working a week in advance, and then they go back and do one 2 days before they start the work. And then once we actually complete the work order on our side, we do have door-to-door teams where they actually do go through the neighborhoods. They set up events at, you know, so if you have like the baseball kickoff for the kids. If there's an event and they can join that, they can come out, they set up a tent, and they talk about what's coming and give people more collateral and more information that way. But again, once we see the job done, then that triggers, you know, they'll get flyers in their bill. If they have Frontier now, they'll get a flyer. And then we do have people that go through the neighborhood and, you know, see if homeowners wish to switch.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Zamendi.
I was just gonna ask to make sure that Carter and Baldwin is covered.
Okay, I think we've exhausted our questions. Thank you so much for taking the time to
You're very
give us
welcome.
this presentation.
Thank you for letting me attend. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, that's, now we move on to our consent agenda. Madam City Clerk, would you please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before the City Council this evening, there are 3 consent items for consideration. Consent item A is consideration of Resolution 22-11 approving certain demands. It is recommended that the City Council approve Resolution 22-11 approving the payment of city warrants in the aggregate amount of $187,581.61. Also, Sierra Madre Library warrants in the aggregate amount of $1,863.11. And lastly, payroll transfer in the aggregate amount of $436,161.51. All this for the fiscal year ending June 30th of 2022. Consent item B is the Treasurer's report for the quarter ending September 30, 2021. It is recommended that the City Council receive and file the Treasurer's report for the cash and investment portfolio for the quarter ending September 30, 2021. And finally, consent item C is consideration of adoption of Resolution 22-10. This is authorizing the submittal of application for CalRecycle SB 1383 Local Assistant Grant Program for the fiscal year 2021 through 2022, payment programs and related authorizations. And it is recommended that the City Council adopt Resolution 2110, authorizing submittal of an application for CalRecycle SB 1383 Local Assistant Grant and Program fiscal year, payment programs and related authorizations. Thank you, Mayor. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Since there's so few items, I'll just ask if there are any questions on any of them. Hearing none, I'd like to solicit public comment on any of the items on the consent agenda, A, B, or C. Do we have anything on Zoom?
Nobody raising
Okay.
their hand on Zoom.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a motion for approval?
Can I just make a quick
Please,
comment?
please go right ahead.
So I want to thank Analyst Carlson for spearheading the Cal Recycle grant. It shows again, you know, how our staff is going out there trying to get valuable funds for people in the city. You know, just point out that, you know, this could be $20,000 that could go towards bear-resistant cans, which is, you know, what we're going to be discussing next. So I'm excited to hear this and crossing my fingers. We've got a good track record, but hope we get it.
Other comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Pro Tem.
regarding the Treasury report, always happy to see this. Traditionally, we were only in the LAIF accounts, which were earning 0.206% per year. Since we had a new finance director and Treasurer Mario, things have changed. And it's just wonderful to see that we're making at least our money work for us a little bit. I looked at the numbers, and if we had it only in the LAIF account, which we were doing before, it would be about $50,000. Now we're getting $145,000. That's almost $100,000 more revenue for the city just for our cash sitting in the accounts. The return's not huge. It is what it is because we know interest rates are low right now. But I also did a weighted average of what we are getting in our bond ladders. Again, the LAIF is about 0.2%. With our bond ladder, we're looking at about 1.45%, which is a tremendous increase over the LAIF. So hopefully since this is back in September and we do have some of the ladder expiring in 2022, just want to put out there, hopefully we're extending the bond ladder, especially when rates are currently creeping up a little bit, that we continue to do the good works that the finance department as well as the city treasurer have been doing.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say ditto to everything you said. Council members, any comments? Okay, all right. So we need a motion for approval.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second? Second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, carries unanimously. And that moves us on to the big issue of the evening. I think it's the big issue of the evening. Consideration of the adoption of the Sierra Madre Wildlife Management Plan. And I see we have Analyst Carlson up to conduct his report.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council. For this evening's first discussion item, staff is very happy to present with the City Council the Sierra Madre Wildlife Management Plan, which is included in your packet. The plan is a product of really hard work by the Natural Resources Commission over the past year. It is also envisioned that the plan will be updated from time to time as needed. However, in light of recent human-wildlife interactions, staff is anxious to move on the priority recommendations of the plan, and so is also seeking some council direction on the following 5 items. We would like to seek direction from council on returning with an ordinance prohibiting the feeding of wildlife. Number 2, we would like your direction on a publicity campaign that includes hazing the wildlife, which is described well in the plan. Number 3, we would also like to launch a wildlife watch program in Sierra Madre, and we'll work with the Department of Fish and Wildlife further on this concept. Number 4, we would appreciate any thoughts from council on whether to also pursue an ordinance that regulates or eliminates the use of rodenticides. And finally, although we don't need specific direction on the expanded use of bear-resistant cans, we wanted to keep the council and the public informed on our current efforts to use the bear-resistant cans, especially with the new organics recycling requirements going forward. That's the end of my short report. Thank you. I'd be happy to address any questions or comments you may have. And I also want to thank a number of fish and wildlife professionals who have agreed to join us for this agenda item to assist with questions as well. And I believe they're all virtual at this time. There may be a couple in the chamber that I didn't see.
Okay. Thank you, Analyst Carlson. Oh, well, I guess I should solicit questions from my colleagues up here. Where do we start? There's pretty big subject.
Well, I can start if you.
Okay, please.
So I'm going to immediately go into some details, James, or Analyst Carlson. So I'm in particular looking at the page 42, the conflict bear section. And so the first question I have on it, and I'm trying to get to the table that's in it. I may have the wrong page. Hold on. There is the table. Which appendix is that in?
That'd be Appendix B. It's called Tiered Responses.
Page 32. I have a question on 42, but I wanted to start with 32. Can you first tell me where this came from?
Yeah, actually, as soon as Sierra Madre began experiencing some really close interactions with our residents, and particularly some identified bears in the canyon area, City Manager Reynoso reached out to the city managers in the area and asked them for a little background on how their cities had been approaching that. This matrix, I believe, came from our friends at the City of Arcadia and really hit the spot. It really encapsulated what the commission was trying to get as far as their writing of the Tiered Responses appendix. We were fortunate enough to notice last Wednesday that the Department of Fish and Wildlife had just issued a brand new departmental bulletin that addresses tiered responses. So it goes along very well with our color-coded matrix. Of course, you're not going to get an A equals B all the time, and we understand that each incident is going to be, you know, a special circumstance, and we want them to look at everything independently. There's not 100% straight across formula that I think we would ever be interested in using.
So, I have a specific question, or I have two specific questions on this. So, it talks about work sites in levels C, D, and E. Why does it have work sites, and how do work sites relate to homes?
I think it's simply that we found this matrix that really addressed work sites. And I've seen other matrices that are almost identical. They can address in the home, in the wild camping, you know, other things like that. This is the one we grabbed a hold of and went with.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful. And Bear 508 and her two cubs, where would they be in this matrix right now?
In discussions with our wonderful police chief, we are looking at level 4, level D, and we would consider that a high-risk level 4 response.
Okay, that was my biggest question. Then I've got a different angle then on neighborhood watch.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me about how many neighborhood watch programs we have, and do we have any in the canyon, and how active are they? If we're going to expand this into wildlife watch,
sure,
do we have the infrastructure there that we can immediately expand, or do we have to start with a neighborhood watch program and build from that?
I don't think there's a simple answer across the citywide, but I can tell you the Upper Canyon has a very passionate neighborhood watch program. We were working with them. I think it was mentioned last week. We did a Zoom meeting at 3 o'clock. Ms. Addy and Ms. Hitz-Tuff were instrumental in helping us get that together and continuing to put the publicity out for these bear incidents specifically, but also wildlife in general throughout the town.
Great. All right. Thank you. I have one more question, and then I do have some other, I'd like to take offline, some smaller things on
Sure.
it. So now I will go to page 42, and we've got there, on that page there are 9 different items, and this may be more for our police chief. So it says, for any conflict bearer, in order to consider relocation or placement, documentation must contain the following information and be made readily available for decision making. For the 13 events that we have for 508, do we have the these 9-point information?
I don't believe we do have it specifically. I think that's something that we're trying to catch up with, and so that we can really translate what we're seeing in the field into Department of Fish and Wildlife's programs.
Councilman Parkhurst, for the rest of the council, we don't have the same pagination that you have,
That's
so
right.
could you?
My sincere apologies. I was going off the PDF. It's page 10 of 19 in Appendix
B, I
E.
think, right? And this is the brand new.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, this is the fresh off the press new bulletin from Fish and Wildlife from last Wednesday.
So you know, I was trying to think about, we've got a long-term and an immediate issue here. I'm sorry, we shouldn't go into discussion until we come back, but that, you can see where my line of questioning was going.
Yeah. Any other questions? So I'll throw one at you. Identified the Bear 408 and the Cubs as level 4D, correct? High risk.
That's between discussions with the chief and I. That's where we put it.
So the way I read that means that they would be potential candidates for relocation or even euthanasia, correct?
That's the way I read the new bulletin.
Right. Okay. Also, I wanted to ask you about how would we go about, I see you wanted to enforce an animal feeding ordinance, which sounds great. I don't think you're going to get much opposition to that ordinance, but how do you enforce that? Who does that? What resources would we have for that?
Sure, I've done some initial analysis on these types of ordinances, and I think what would be specific to Sierra Madre would be able to define active and passive eating. Obviously, and it's already a state law, you can't pull out a piece of steak and feed it to the bear. The other component that we're looking at is maybe hummingbird feeders or fruit trees where the fruit is consistently on the ground. Those are two different ways that we might look at doing that ordinance. And a lot of it also, we have a wonderful code enforcement system here in Sierra Madre. We get reports of it. You'd be amazed at some of the reports I'm getting of residents feeding animals on purpose, which just really shouldn't happen. So there'd be some response and investigation along those lines as well.
So primarily you're talking about code enforcement?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Do we have enough hours available in code enforcement?
Well, I don't think we ever do, but this would be one way to not rely on the statewide, non-specific ordinance that already is, and we get to make our own Sierra Madre one. While we're doing that, I always assume that people might start talking about it. There'll be some publicity about our new ordinance prohibiting the feeding of wildlife. All of that would go towards this effort as well.
Could that be melded into the Wildlife Watch idea?
It could, yes, yes, yes.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'd like to open this up.
I'm sorry, can I ask
please.
one more? So, excuse me, let me go back. So we heard from Fish and Wildlife on Friday that Bear 508 had been relocated. I have a specific question. Has the 2 cubs from Bear 508 ever been relocated?
If anybody's from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, I'd welcome your contribution. Otherwise, I'd be happy to give you my anecdotal answer to that.
Hi, this is Rebecca. I'm the biologist for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. The cubs have not been relocated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Analyst Carlson. I'm going to throw this open to public comment. And so anyone who'd like to comment on this particular agenda item, please come to the forum. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, we received 2 speaker cards. The first for Gary Hood.
Mr. Hood, are you here? Yes. There he is.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. I have brought some literature, if I can, and I bought extra copies in case someone else would like a copy. I've been going through this, and I'd really like to say I'm very pleased to see that the council has taken some action, because we are way behind time in dealing with our, I guess, title of a wildlife sanctuary city. And I feel in the past, we've done not very much. And where my concerns lie are first and foremost, as you all know, as a concern for the citizens. And as an example, a mother sitting in the backyard, her baby's on the blanket, the phone rings, she can see the phone, she can look out and see the baby. And if the people aren't educated, a hawk could fly down out of the sky and pick that baby up. That's no exaggeration. We had a lady here in town, her dog was sitting on the edge of her bed. A mountain lion came in and grabbed her dog off of the bed and ran and jumped over the fence with it. I mean, these are just examples, and I don't want to run out of time on that, but I'm saying that I'm kind of disappointed that we are not doing something more modern in our research here. And as you can tell, I'm part of a group. They are a research group. We have a couple of teachers in the group that have put together an educational program to go to the schools, figuring that if the kids see it in school, they're going to take it home to the parents. And that's a way for the students to educate the parents. I'm very disappointed that we're talking old technology, and if there's people here from the Forest Service, I know they're speaking for all over the United States. But for someone that's looking out for the animals, banging pots and pans to scare off the animals, this is old stuff. These animals are here because they're thirsty, they're hungry, and yeah, we educate our community, but where's the wildlife going to go from here? They're going to go down further than Orange Grove. I think that we really need to be looking at some more modern approaches to this. I say I have 17 seconds left, but if there's anybody that would like to talk, you have an email address with your literature there, and we would be more than happy to discuss a research group for dealing with more modern answers to these problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hood.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker card is for Nancy Beckham.
I'm Nancy Beckham from 337 North Lima. I began talking to you about some endangered species that was not part of this program that you are putting together. I'm quite concerned about this particular little friend. It is the Townsend long-eared bat. They're a quite nice little animal because they eat moss and they eat mosquitoes. And so they do a lot of good things for our environment, but that's not part of anything that I saw, and I read that whole brochure, bulletin thing you sent, and they were not even mentioned. Yes, you did a good job of covering the cougar, or the California mountain lion, which is a very protected species, and they live up in the canyon. They also feed on the deer that are down at Madre de la Rosa, because that happens to be one of the things that the cougar does enjoy eating, as well as dogs, cats, and rats, and all the rest of it. However, I'm very concerned about what's going to happen if and when this housing development goes in, because if in fact those trees are taken down at Madre de la Rosa, the bats are going to lose their environment. If you're going to take down the trees in Bailey Canyon to widen Carter, you're also going to have the owls, which are predatory animals. I think that's how you say that word. You're going to lose them because that's where they live, and they are wonderful in terms of eating the rats and mice that invade our town. Anytime you have an older town, you have rats and mice and those kinds of animals. There's nothing in here about this kind of stuff. Now, yes, we're concerned about the bears. They're big. But taking off what Gary gave me, which is part of what I envisioned as a coloring book, activity book for kids to do at school and take home and have their parents co-sign, and if the kids can explain to their parents what the book's all about, then it's going back to the parents as well. If you drew a picture of a bear and did a dot to dot so that the kids would end up drawing the bear, and you've got a paragraph underneath saying, don't feed the bear and a few things like that, you'd be amazed at how this could actually get the information from the kids to the parents. The kids are teaching their parents about what you can do and what you can't do, and then it comes back to the teacher because the kids have to get the parent signature and the kids have to take it back to school. I mean, it brings it all the way around. For the little kids that can't do that, the teacher simply reads stories about bats and cougars and that kind of thing and how you don't approach a cougar, and so, it goes that way with books. The middle schoolers, they need it through their science classes, and there's a way to take this information and buck it up, because I taught school for 42 years. I know what I'm talking about. So, do you have any questions for me?
It doesn't look like it, no.
Okay, well, you understand I'm a little worried about this friend because the endangered species are not anywhere. And that needs to be added to James's really good idea about how you're going to teach the community about these animals. Okay?
Thank you, Mrs. Beckham.
Mr. Mayor, we have a third speaker card for Katrina Hitztuck.
Hello everybody, Katrina here. I'm from the Upper Canyon. My name's been used a few times tonight. Obviously we're pretty active in this. We live with the bears and bobcats, etc. So the first thing I want to say, actually, I was really excited to see this plan. You're never going to come out with a plan that has everything that everybody wants, and so obviously we can improve it. But I'm really excited because in this city we have a human problem, not really a bear and a wildlife problem. We live with the wildlife, and anything we can do to work together to figure out how to resolve the way that we can live with wildlife is a step in the right direction. A few things that were mentioned in the plan, one was rodenticides. I think we need to make sure that that's more than just talked about, in that we've got bobcats right now dying because they're eating rodents that have eaten, you know, all the pesticides, and that happens pretty regularly. It happens at least a couple of times a year in the canyon when we find them. I'm a huge proponent of what I've heard so far about the Wildlife Watch. I think this is a great advocacy program that could be really strong. This is a community, a city that likes to talk. Obviously, I'm Scottish and I live here. I like to talk too. And I think one of the key things is these issues can become very divisive until we talk about them and we actually realize we share the same desires, that we all want to live here and we want to live in tandem with the animals that live here. And we want to do that understanding their needs as much as our own needs, right? So I think that's the second thing I would say. And then the last point I want to make is the trash cans. I know that this is a really difficult one and people have different views because it's expensive to have bear-proof trash cans. I have them, other people have drilled holes and made their own. I was really excited to hear that the city is potentially looking into auto-unlocking ones that then can be picked up by Athens, automatically opened. You don't have to pay the $20, I think it is, a month cost to get them unlocked, so it makes it more affordable. So I'm excited you guys are looking into that. Everything that we can do to figure out how to live in tandem with the wildlife that's here, do our part, do our yard checks, you know, and avoid what we've just had happen with Bear 508, where, you know, we're right at the end of the road because we haven't prevented those food sources and we've created a problem. So I really appreciate everybody working together, Fish and Wildlife working together, the police and the fire department and the whole city and the city council working together. And I really hope we can keep evolving this so that we get it right and we learn and we become that model city. So thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments on this agenda item? Are there any on Zoom?
We don't have any comments on Zoom today.
Thank you. Okay. So I'll bring this back to the council.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
There are emails.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Could you please inform us of those?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, there were 3 emails received by city staff that were forwarded to the city council for consideration and scanned and uploaded onto the city's website for transparency and public access.
So what's your pleasure, folks? How do you want to approach this? There are a couple of things that I wanted to throw out there. First, it's the plan itself. To what degree do we want to embrace it? And then secondly, and Councilmember Parkhurst brought it up, and we can't dance around it anymore. We have a bear that's a real problem up in the canyon. And it's a public safety issue as well as a wildlife issue. So I'd like to see if we can treat those maybe separately. And there might be other issues. I'd like to see what you guys think. Are there other pieces of this that you'd like to focus on separately?
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
When you talk about the plan, are you also thinking about the other kind of questions that Analyst Carlson asked, the ordinance, the hazing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. So then I have nothing else.
Any other thoughts from my colleagues? Well, let me just address the issue of 508, Bear 508. It's a difficult issue because we have a city that loves wildlife. Many of us moved here because of it. And most of us are able to navigate that with perfectly fine in a safe manner, and it makes living in Sierra Madre one of the reasons we live here and want to stay here. Unfortunately, and as this matrix points out in this plan, we know that there are some bears through a series of events over time that become so habituated to human beings that they're no longer fearful of human beings. And when that is the case, they start to break into people's homes, and they start to break into people's cars. And most of the time, I sat in on the Fish and Wildlife meeting on Friday at 3, held by our police department. I thought that was a tremendously informative meeting. But I did hear from a number of people, and I'm surprised they're not contributing tonight, that they're very concerned about this particular bear. And some of the small children that live up there, some of the infirmed residents that live up there, and some of the elderly residents that live up there, because evidently this bear has been getting into houses, and we've had some close calls in terms of people's personal safety. So I want it to be known that last week on my initiative, I did send a letter on behalf of the city to Fish and Wildlife asking for them to consider relocating Bear 508. I would like to ask City Manager Reynoso if you could update us on what we've heard back from them or what we know from them at this point.
Thank you, Mayor. Our police chief is scheduled to have further conversations with Fish and Wildlife this week, as soon as I believe it's tomorrow. So we are still coordinating with Fish and Wildlife. We haven't received a response yet on the letter that was mailed out.
That was a week ago. Okay. So this is a wildlife issue, but it's also a public safety issue, and I'd like to solicit, if you're willing, Chief Armelin, I would like to see if you could make a quick comment about this situation. I think our residents up in the canyon would like to know where we're at on this, not again as a wildlife matter, but as a matter of public safety.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, this has been a real concern, and at times a bit of a drain on our resources. I did some research over the past year, and I was able to identify, I believe it's 15 incidences where dealing with these 3 bears, they actually either entered a home, entered a car, or blocked entrance for individuals to either get into their home or get out of their home. And in fact, one of those incidents, my officers had to extract 2 young ladies who were inside the home and trapped in their rooms while the bears were inside of the house. That's a major safety concern for us, not just for the citizens, but for our officers as well. We've also had some residents who are elderly and disabled who've expressed great concern because the bears have been at homes next door to their houses. So every time we're called out, you know, we have to concern ourselves with the safety of the individuals inside the property, the safety of our officers, as well as the safety of these bears. So, and I know that when we're talking about a mother bear and her cubs, just that in itself is a dangerous matter. So I do feel that something needs to be done with these particular bears. It's a great concern for me, and I've tried to make myself available to the community up there as much as possible. I know what we've tracked, I really don't think those are just the only incidents that have happened. I think there are other residents who have decided that they weren't going to inform us. I honestly would not be surprised if they've either entered other homes or tried to force their way into the homes. And that's the real scary part too, that they are forcing their way into some of these homes and pushing doors. In fact, one of the car incidents, they actually broke the passenger side window. I'm assuming there's probably food or spilled food inside the car, but they broke a window and got inside that car. And not really funny, but somehow they managed to release the parking brake and the car rolled down and crashed into a wall. And they destroyed the inside of that vehicle. In fact, there are two or three vehicles where they've gotten inside and actually caused significant damage. We also have an incident where they entered a residence and took a family pet out of a cage and unfortunately killed that animal and left such a mess that when the property owner got home, she required medical assistance from our fire department. So I would say, this is a big concern for me, and I really do feel like something needs to be done with these bears.
Thank you, Chief, appreciate
Yes,
it. I know that we have participating in the Zoom call representatives from Fish and Wildlife. I'd like to see if you could comment on this, if you will.
Should we just go ahead and fire it off?
Please do, yes.
Okay, this is Rebecca Barboza again. Thank you so much for having us here this evening. A couple of things. Back when we were discussing the wildlife, the management plan, I think there was some reference, it's really hard for me to hear, by the way. I think there were some references made to the 11 necessary items for relocation to be considered according to our brand new bear policy. And I have to reinforce the fact that the Department of Fish and Wildlife has to determine these things. And we, you know, I'm the regional human wildlife conflict coordinator, so everything just about comes through me. And I have not heard of all of these incidences in Sierra Madre. They have not been reported to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, so that we can't go in and do the investigation and determine what's actually going on. The incidences that we heard about was the one where the bear made entry to the house, but in my investigation, I was told that door was left open, and you can't leave a door open, you can't leave windows open in bear country. So just simple education of the neighborhoods and compliance with what we recommend can go a long way. And that's where Wildlife Watch can really help you, because we involve the city first, and we come to an understanding of where you want your management plan to go. And I think that after you start exploring Wildlife Watch a little bit, you'll find out that if we have a compliant city, and if we have neighborhoods that, in my vision, even decide to go through the national program called Bearwise, if we have a Bearwise neighborhood in a Wildlife Watch city, we know that everything's in order, that people are removing their attractants, they're not feeding the bears. So if a bear comes in and starts creating problems, it's going to be a lot easier for us to document what's going wrong with the situation, especially under a Wildlife Watch program. Then we would have some of those 11 items checked off already, so that it would be my job as the biologist to gather all of this information and submit it to my region, and then the chain of command would then decide, do we relocate this animal? Do we place it in captivity? Do we euthanize it? Because as a department, those are our only 3 management actions. To relocate this particular animal, 508, she's already been relocated once, and she made her way back to in a block of where she first came from. So this animal is always going to be attracted to Sierra Madre, no matter where we move her. So relocation for this animal probably isn't an option. As far as, you know, as far as the incidents that I'm aware of, like I say, a little cleaning up of the neighborhood and removal of attractants, maybe a little bit of hazing, maybe a team from the police force and a team from the Department of Fish and Wildlife to start hazing these animals a little bit. Maybe that would go a long way, so that we wouldn't have to consider the other alternatives. But you don't get there by just calling us up and saying, hey, you know, we want you to relocate this animal. You get to that stage by planning, and I think that the Wildlife Watch program is going to get you very far in that planning process.
Thank you, Ms. Barboza. Did anyone
You're welcome.
Any follow-up questions? Or yes.
If I may. So I recognize that we may not have had all of our paperwork in order from a bureaucratic perspective. So does that mean we need to wait till someone gets injured before we can do anything about this bear? Because we've got 15 incidences of this bear. It's not going in to unlock doors. We just heard from the police chief, it broke a window, it released a parking brake. And we've got, I mean, this is beyond, like, yes, we as a city, I think I can take ownership of this as a city council member. We haven't put the program in place to document really well and communicate really well. But I don't want bureaucracy to be the issue. I don't want to have to answer to the voters here if someone gets injured that, well, we couldn't do it because we haven't checked all the boxes on it. I mean, we've got a serious issue here that we need to do something about really soon.
Right, and I totally understand where you're coming from, and I'm not trying to make it sound like a bureaucracy. I'm just saying, in a perfect world, if you had the Wildlife Watch program, a lot of these things would already be in place. That doesn't mean that we're going to ignore 508 and this situation. We asked the police department to supply us with the names and contact information of those people so that we could go and do our investigation, so that we can document this, because ultimately we have to document this and come up with a decision.
Okay, I'd like to follow that up. Thank you for that response. So just from a timeline point of view, assuming our police chief can get additional information to you or to whomever else needs to get it, what would the expected timeline be to get a decision so that we could move forward on this?
Well, given the fact that this is a brand new policy and we haven't collectively as a region gone over it and made decisions from it yet, I really can't give you a date of when we would be able to decide on the decision. It's really going to be all dependent on our investigation. So that's the most important thing, is to get that investigation done.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one other follow-up? Ms. Barboza, how far away was Bear 508 relocated?
I don't have that information. Our law enforcement was on that particular day was the division that relocated that animal. I don't have that information.
Does distance make a difference? If we do it 100 miles, 200 miles away, does that make a difference in them being able to find their way back?
They can travel hundreds of miles, and they have.
And does the fact that we have a mom that's teaching her 2 cubs to break into people's homes, does that have any influence on the decision of relocation? We may not be we may have relocated the mother. We haven't relocated the kids, and the kids are learning from mom.
Right, and the cubs would be more susceptible to the hazing and to the kind of the traditional methods of dealing with bears than 508.
Okay, thank you for those responses. Any other questions about this particular issue? I don't know that we have a decision-making nexus tonight on this issue, other than I think the police chief, Armlin, is fully aware now that this is a very high concern for this council, and we hope that we can expedite these communications with Fish and Wildlife with the idea of some kind of solution, hopefully short of euthanasia. I think looking at attending the wildlife meeting, the whole meeting Friday, and going through this, it doesn't seem like there are other options. There's relocation when you get to this point, or euthanasia. And I only hope that while that time transpires, that we are able to protect our citizens up in the canyon, the hillside areas, until we get that decision. Obviously, I'm not very comfortable, saying this. I think we should probably move more quicker. Yes, Councilmember Arizmendi.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
Please, go ahead.
No, I haven't commented on this, but I just want to underscore and echo Councilmember Parkhurst's concerns. And, I understand, Ms. Barboza, that we might be a little bit behind in implementing this plan, but given where we're at, I will say that when I received the email listing all of these incidences is extremely concerning. And of course, we have residents that are coming to us saying exactly injured until we take action. So I understand you have to do your investigation. I'm going to ask if staff and Chief Armland can really make this as a high priority to get this information to you so that we are not just waiting for the plan to take place or waiting for another incident to occur. And I understand, you know, I obviously am not the expert relocating that bears do make it back, and 508 made it back. But at this point, you know, what other option do we have as opposed to just taking taking some type of action and understanding that the bear may come back? But when you have 15, 16 incidences that we have in really just a recent history here in Sierra Madre in such a small area, I think it would behoove us to not take some kind of action and again make this a priority and ask Fish and Wildlife to reconsider this. We are going to do what we can to make sure that our environment is safe as possible, that we're going to deter, that we are going to look into hazing. But at the same time, I feel it is prudent for us to push to make sure that action and investigation is taken as soon as possible.
Any other comments? Councilmember Reeves?
Yeah, I was just wondering, given that there will be some time, you know, even with an expedition of the information and, you know, hopefully a prioritization of the investigation, I'm just wondering if there are things that we could be advising the residents in this area sort of on an immediate basis. Maybe it's just an expedited version of the kind of education that we're talking about in the plan, but it seems to me that things like, you know, not having you know, food stored outside the home and not having food in your car and just sort of these kinds of things that hopefully are resonant to these residents because of these incidents, but maybe it is a matter of providing some of these, you know, these preventative measures. But, you know, I don't know if we're sort of past that point because these bears are not, you know, are aware that even if they don't see the food, that the food is inside, but it still seems to me that there might be some things that we could do to advise that community more immediately to maybe help limit or reduce the incidents.
Well, if we can get through this plan tonight and hopefully adopt it, I think that's a great idea. I think we should maybe have staff maybe expedite an abbreviated version of some of the key points here.
We can't hear you, sir.
Oh, sorry. I was suggesting that we get through this plan tonight. Hopefully we can adopt it, and then we could take an abbreviated version of some of the most important points in dealing with bears, having to do with the food, having to do with hazing, and get that to people in the affected areas immediately, maybe in just dropping them off or a quick overnight mailing, because I think the urgency here is very great. So I appreciate your ideas. So shall we talk about the plan now and see if there's any aspect of it that we want to consider rewording or adding to? I'm speaking now as a complete novice here. I don't have the expertise to really critique this. From what I'm looking at, it seems like, and it's already gone through the Ener Commission, and we got some really good people in there. I know Analyst Carlson's been working on this for a long time. He's put a lot of effort into it. So it looks pretty good to me. So I'm just wondering if we have any reservations that we need to talk about now. If so, we should deal with them.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Arizmendi.
Yeah, thank you, Analyst Carlson, for your leadership on this. I know this is something that you've been very passionate about, and I also want to extend my thanks to the Ener Commission on all the work here. I also, Mr. Mayor, I'm not an expert in this area and don't have the technical expertise, but you know, as the management plan is presented, I'd like to support that. In terms of some of the recommendations, I think the bear-resistant can is really going to need to be a top priority, and you know, we're working with Athens Management, with the Waste Management on this also. But given again the changes of the compost, I think it's just going to exacerbate our issues with the bears. And yeah, and I like to see an ordinance coming back on the prohibiting of the feeding of the wildlife and promoting the communication of hazing recommendations in the Wildlife Watch program. You know, I know the rodenticide prohibition is important to many, but to me, with those 5 recommendations, the other 4 I would say are a priority.
I mean, I'll just say I'm in complete agreement with what you just said, and that's all I have to say.
Yeah, Mayor Goss,
Pro Tem?
I'm in complete agreement, and Management Analyst Carlson stated that this document is subject to change. It's gonna be a living document, and we'll be able to change things as we learn more things. So nothing in there that I'm against, but you know, we could use to add some things and maybe clean up some of the language. But I think, as is, if we could get this thing through as quickly as possible, that would be a good thing. And I think I'm of like mind with former Mayor Asmendi, Councilmember Asmendi, as far as getting those other 4 things up and running. But the rodenticide is an issue, not just for wildlife, but also for our domestic pets. I mean, they can get a hold of rats just as easily that have eaten some of the stuff, and it can affect our pets and our parts of our family, right? So that is something we should definitely look into.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I agree with everything everyone has said, and I also agree that I'm not qualified to make, line level edits to this plan. The one sort of just conceptual thing I would say is that I think some of the nomenclature around the prohibition on feeding of wildlife may be limiting. I think people hear feeding of wildlife and they think of, sort of what has been stated from the dais about, like, active feeding in terms of, purposefully feeding or leaving out food. I think, if we can figure out a way to either have a different term or a broader term, because I do think some of this more passive feeding is really driving a lot of the problem, and I just want to make sure that when we talk about it, we don't, direct it in a way that people say, well, I'm not feeding the bears, I'm not giving them food, and not sort of including in that sort of thought process that, no, having a refrigerator, in an open shed is akin to feeding the bears, and just sort of thinking about it in a broader way. So that's my only conceptual comment. I wouldn't have any particular specific edits on that, but I just want to make sure that whatever materials we put out kind of makes it clear that, feeding goes beyond just, buying, taking the bread to the ducks at the pond. It's not just that.
So I'll agree with everyone. I have a slightly different take on things. I completely agree we should adopt this tonight. In the work that I do, I issue documents and that people use to implement practices, and it is very, very, very rare to have a version 1.0. You very often you have 1.0 and then you go to 1.1 immediately, and I kind of see that with this. I'm all in support of adopting this tonight. I do like Ms. Beckham's recommendation to be thinking about other endangered species in here. I think, we do live in the WUI here, the wild-urban interface. So having some more of the species of concern, I think that's worthwhile having in there. And I don't know how far to go. I don't want this to be an encyclopedic compendium, but I think that, at a minimum, the endangered species, I think would be helpful. On the 5 items we were asked to think about, I completely support an ordinance. I think that makes sense. The publicity campaign on hazing, full support. I've already mentioned the Wildlife Watch program, and I'm very supportive of the bear-resistant cans. On the rodenticides, what I want to know, I'm not ready to vote on that yet, to support that yet, but I'd like to know what the alternative is. I am compelled at the impact this has to wildlife. And I really would like to know, well, other than having the traps around, are there other options that people can have? I mean, rodents are a big issue in a lot of people's homes. It's a big issue in my house. And so and you know what, I use rodenticides. I'll fess up to it right here. I'd love to have another option, but we had huge issues with rodents. And so I don't like it. So if there's another option, other than going out and putting traps all the time, I'm willing to consider it. So I'd like to have more information on that.
So I assume that would be part of a latter analysis of that issue, breaking it down more in that regard. I think it's very important. Big rodent issue in the city, obviously. So I think we have direction then for staff at this point. So let's get back to Councilmember Krieb's idea. Could we take the piece on bear hazing and feeding, and keeping in mind the passive feeding as well? Is there some way we could get that on a card and get it out?
Yes, I think I understood the sentiment pretty accurately. We do continuously put out fish and wildlife brochures, Keep Me Wild, A Fed Bear is a Dead Bear, things like that. Perhaps a refreshing, something from the city as opposed to what you're used to seeing online or in other things. It's not going to be much different, though. I mean, a lot of the recommendations are going to be similar, but I think just coming out from the city with our really talented publicity people that we have right now, I think that would kind of catch people's eye a little bit better. And it would be targeted too, I do believe.
Right. And would it be fair, or would it be appropriate to, at somewhere on the document, give people a heads up about Bear 508 and the Cubs, that this is a more pertinent set of issues because of that right now?
I think it could be an educational example.
Right.
At this point, like we really don't like what might happen. Yeah. Here's what we need to do now.
Right. Are we good with that?
Yeah, if I could follow up, I mean, we've got some fabulous pictures, and all they say about a picture is worth 1,000 words. I mean, some of these I think could be pretty compelling. Says you don't want this to happen to your house or whatever. So if we have a picture of that car or broken windows, I mean, I don't know if people recognize, but Bear 508 made the national news. It was actually the bear that went in and got the Kentucky Fried Chicken container ended up on Wait, Don't Tell Me at the end of its segment. They didn't say Sierra Madre, but anybody who's listening and paid attention is like, that's how big this is. So if we can get something, there is attention out there on this. If we can build off of that, I think that would be really helpful.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Analyst Carlson. Do we need to provide staff with any other direction? We're good? Okay. Thank you to everybody involved, and I know that's quite a piece of work that you brought to us tonight. Yes, I forgot you were there in Zoom land.
Action on adopting the plan itself?
I don't think we do, right? I think we just give you direction to go back and.
We're seeking direction to adopt the plan.
Right.
Tonight, yes.
I thought you're seeking direction, so you don't want us to take a vote on.
We do need a vote, correct?
Yeah, I apologize if that wasn't clear. I'd really appreciate a vote on the plan, to adopt the plan.
Okay.
And then the direction I was looking for was the top 5 recommendations. Sounds like we're going to start with the 4. Okay. And we'll move along.
Okay, so you're going to bring those back, but we're going to approve the plan tonight by
That's what I would
a
really
voice vote.
appreciate, yeah.
Okay, you got it. So I'd like to.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I will make the motion to adopt the Sierra Madre Wildlife Management Plan as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, great. And that brings us to the consideration of the adoption of the Sierra Madre Outdoor Dining Patio Program and recommended fees. Looks like Director Semino is with us tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Excuse me if my stomach growls. Lunch was a long time ago, and we're going to be talking about our restaurants in town. So, tonight before you, we have the new outdoor dining resource guide for your approval. The guidelines are designed to assist businesses in applying to utilize city property for outdoor dining purposes. This guide explains sidewalk versus patio dining options and the cost of encroaching on public property for business purposes. Expanded outdoor dining started as a remedy to sustain local businesses during the start of the COVID-19 pandemic 2 years ago. The public feedback received suggests temporary patios and expanded sidewalk dining continues to be enjoyed and a necessity beyond the pandemic. Overall, expanded outdoor dining offers a unique opportunity to link economic development and continue economic growth for the city and the local businesses. While outdoor dining expansions have been offered to downtown food establishments with no fee for the past 2 years as a result of the city's CARES Act, a permanent program must consider fees for their year-round encroachment on public property. After research, staff determined a fair starting point for the lease of outdoor patio dining be approved at $8 per square foot of patio space per year. Public Works staff built the initial outdoor dining patios in March of 2020 with CARES Act funds, with the intention of them being temporary solution to indoor dining restrictions. Nearly 2 years later, the temporary patios are starting to show their wear and tear of the continuous use. Staff is recommending once the new guidelines are adopted, the restaurants may decide if they want to continue with the use of public space for their patios. If they decide to continue the outdoor patios, staff will issue a permit to rebuild their patios under the guidance of the city's planning and community preservation and the Public Works Department review and permit process. We have received some feedback from the restaurant owners asking if we would offset the permit fees for the first year with help for the cost of construction. This is an option that council may consider. And I have a PowerPoint for you for the tier levels of our sidewalk and patio dining. So we're calling it the al fresco dining. There's 4 tiers. 4 tiers will show you the difference between private space, which isn't our sidewalk or patios, standard sidewalk dining, enhanced sidewalk dining, and then the street patios. Let me do it too? Okay. So tier 1 is private space. So we asked the restaurants to see if they had space on their own property that they can utilize for their patio dining during the COVID-19. This has worked out for a few of the restaurants, and it's become a very useful area for people to expand their dining onto their properties. There's a couple conditions that have to be met for that they would have to have the owner's approval of the property. Some of the businesses don't own the properties, so they would have to have their owner's approval. Hours of operation meet their indoor dining operation hours. And then temporary tents, canopies, any kind of cover would have, that's over 120 square feet, are subject to building and safety codes, and they would need permits for those. Tier 2 is standard sidewalk dining. Standard sidewalk dining is a $433 encroachment permit. Today's fee schedule. In July, it may go up by or whatever percent. Restaurants are permitted to offer outdoor dining in front of their restaurants. It's limited to the front of their restaurants with the standard sidewalk dining permit. And if they don't have enough space in front of their restaurant, then they go to the expanded dining, so which is tier 3. Tier 3 is expanded dining restaurant. Restaurants may encroach on the frontage of adjacent businesses with written consent from those businesses themselves. It is public property. It is part of our sidewalk, so we can issue a permit on that, but we ask that they get their permission from the neighbors. And that's a standard $435 encroachment permit. Tier 4 is the street patios, which we're proposing for an $8 per square foot. The patio dining utilizes public right-of-way, is limited to restaurants that provide a table service, so there's continuous wait service to keep the tables clean and sanitary. Outdoor patio dining is not guaranteed. It is an approval process through the Public Works and Planning and Preservation departments. It's dependent on the location, feasibility, parking availability, storm drain access, and some other factors that have to be considered when we build out into the street. Next one. Design standards. There has to be a 5-foot continuous walkway for pedestrians on the sidewalks. So the picture here is depicting Casa del Rey, which has the sidewalk dining and a patio, and they are showing how, or the picture showing you how there's still a 5-foot continuous path for access. In the new guidelines, umbrellas are permitted. They have to have a 7-foot clearance if they're on the sidewalk or out of the pedestrian's pathway. And then we're suggesting that sail kites style shades are permissible, but the canopy style with plastic sides will not be allowed. And that's because of the safety of those, and if they are on the patios, they would have to comply to building standards on public right-of-way, and the canopy ones wouldn't meet those standards. Next one. Here's another picture of a canopy or a sail kite style shade. This is the only place in town. This one meets those standards, and it gets widely used. Okay, next one. This one is communal space. So during the Kirsten Court refresh last year, staff created more communal space in the Kirsten Court area to support the various types of food establishments that don't necessarily have wait service. Examples of these communal seating areas most recently enhanced are the seating areas on the east and west of Kirsten Court. So this is in front of Chase Bank there. These are tables and chairs that the city supplies out there. Public Works crews come every morning to wipe them down, clean them, make sure they're back in place. And we do have umbrellas for them, but we've pulled them during the season when there's wind. We didn't want to have anybody getting hurt. These seating areas are left available to the public without a lease or a sidewalk permit requirements, as they are first come, first serve for the restaurant or for the food service areas in the area, and just for the kids coming down on Friday and have a place to do their homework.
Right.
Go to the next. So staff is considering a sidewalk enhancement program that we will be bringing to you in the next budget for fiscal year. It's the south side of Sierra Madre Boulevard. James has a map he's going to bring up right now. It'll create communal seating area and enhanced sidewalk dining area. With this concept, the sidewalk would be widened by 5 feet on the south side of the street, and it could be can accommodate expanded spaces while providing ADA access. So this will show the other one, James, that has the profile. This expansion would require some construction on Sierra Madre Boulevard because it will include moving the center line and narrowing the driving lanes to 12.7 or 12.5 feet each driving lane. So this is giving you an example of the enhanced sidewalk on the south side of the street to add more. So currently it's 10 feet wide. Adding 5 feet would make it 15. So there could be 10 feet for tables and chairs on the south side of the street. And then that way we wouldn't need to have the patios on Sierra Madre Boulevard, on that south side of Sierra Madre Boulevard, to take up the parking. This would allow for that parking to come back on that side of the street. Staff will bring this concept back to council during the budget process with better designs, but we just thought we'd show you some of that we're considering for next year's projects. I do see that there's some restaurant owners in the audience. I'm sure they'll want to come up and speak. Staff is recommending that the council approve the outdoor patio program manual with additions or subtractions, whatever you'd like. And then also approve staff's recommendation of $8 per square foot to be added to next year's fee schedule. That concludes my report if you have any questions.
Thank you, Director Semino. Questions?
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Please, Councilmember Mendy.
I actually think you may have, thank you, Director Semino, for the report. I think I understand now why I don't understand Tier 3. It's because it hasn't been designed yet, and that's something you're working on. If that one's correct, my assumption on that. And then my second question is, with the income that's being generated from this, I see it can be used for maintenance. Can this also be used for staffing? Those are my two questions.
The financial part of it, I am not aware how we can use that. The suggestion was to add some sidewalk, more pressure washing in the downtown area, in the restaurant areas, and maybe more maintenance in those areas. But staffing, I'm not too sure. We'd have to ask Hillary in a later date. And the expanded sidewalk, For example, Monsieur Crepe is outside their area in front, the frontage of their property. That's an expanded sidewalk, also like Yugi Sushi. Those are ones that would apply for the expanded. What they have to do is get letters from the neighboring businesses and show us their insurances in the permit process. Show us their.
George Skinner, that's the enhanced sidewalk dining. The examples are like Monsieur Crepe and Yui Sushi.
Yeah, those are a couple of the examples. And then if we extend the sidewalk by 5 feet, and they stay within their frontage of their business, that's not enhanced sidewalk. That's regular sidewalk dining. It's just a tiered system for us to use in the permit process.
Okay, so that's the tier 2 would be just the standard sidewalk if they don't extend it.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Director Semino, with respect to the enhanced sidewalk dining, I believe the charge was $8 per square foot. Is that correct?
No, that's just for the patio.
That's just the
That's
patio.
not the enhanced.
Because to the extent we are essentially leasing city property to business owners, those funds can be used for any purpose. That goes to the general fund. If it's strictly a regulatory permit being issued to regulate activities happening on private property, those would be limited to the costs that staff incurs, and profit can't be made off of that.
Thank you, City Attorney. Here goes in. Other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Creeves.
Thank you for your report. Just a quick question about how the two programs would interact in terms of the plan that you've put before us for approval tonight, and then the potential for the expanded sidewalk that you mentioned. Would that be the choice of having a patio that does encroach upon the parking versus just having the extra 5 feet on the sidewalk in front of the establishment? Is that going to be at the choice of the proprietor, or is that the choice of the city? If there's an expanded sidewalk available, then the patio would not be available? How are they meant to interact?
I think the patio permits are going to be up for our approval, and I think that will be a huge consideration when we're approving the permits. So if that sidewalk does get expanded, there would be no need for the permit on those sides of the street.
Thank you.
Councilmember Parkhurst.
On the sidewalk extension, how does that impact the bike lanes? We recently got some money, I think, from the city of Arcadia to have Sierra Madre Boulevard be a bike lane, and you go down on any weekend day and you go by Starbucks and you're lucky to get a seat because there's all these wonderful cyclists coming through town. How does that impact the bike lane?
Yeah, the bike lane in downtown is a share of the road bike lane. So the bike lane from Lima to Baldwin is share the road. Well, no, actually to the end of town is share the road. So there isn't necessarily a bike lane. There is the signs up that say share the road and the insignias on the street. So we would be narrowing it, and yes, if we're down to 12.5 feet, you're not going to fit 3 bikes wide and a car. But it is going to be just the block of Bank of the West to Kirstein Court crosswalk.
And then a second question on the fees that we have for this program. How do our fees compare to other cities in San Gabriel Valley?
Our fees are based on, just like Attorney Gurigosin said, they're based on our staff time, and we had a survey done, it's probably been 5 years, to determine the price of fees and how much staff time is included in issuing those permits, and what is related to the process of, say, the encroachment permit. I don't know but the comparison for a permit with other cities, I do know City of Pasadena has a per square foot for patios, but they also have a permit that's included in that, and that permit is $217 plus their per square foot, and then City of San Francisco has $151 for a permit.
What's the per square foot charge in Pasadena? Do you know?
So they determine on how busy the street is. So they're on Colorado, from Arroyo Parkway to Los Robles is $14 a square foot, But from Colorado, from Hudson, or from Lake to Hudson, is $7.28 a square foot. So they vary. I guess depending on how busy the street is and how much parking they're taking away.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that concludes council questions. I'll open this up for public comment. If you're here to comment on this agenda item, please come up to the podium.
Mayor Goss, we received 2 speaker cards. The first for Kelly Rogers.
Mayor, Council, thank you so much. First, I want to do a real quick public thank you to this city and the community for the support they've showed to businesses in this town during the pandemic and throughout this entire endeavor. It has been a tremendous outpouring of help and support, and that's appreciated. In regards to the bump outs in the street, what we like to call at R.T. Rogers Brewing Company, our City View seating. I fully support that. I fully support paying a fee for that. I think it's only fair, but there's a but. And if my patio is a little bit different, our patio, I should say, is a little bit different than the other built-out patios. We're right on the asphalt. We have K-rails around. We don't have the bollards. And we don't have any building up front that we can attach sails to. So my but is it possible to look at these businesses and maybe waive the fee for the first year or adjust it so that we might be able to look into building some kind of structure attached to those K-rails, or what the facility services might consider, to make something more permanent where we can put sails up that's not gonna, fly away, with our little flimsy poles and stuff like that. And I actually have a call out to an iron company for tubular steel pergola type structure. They haven't come out yet. I was hoping they'd be here before this presentation, but we're looking at doing something more structural, more sound, that will not only hold sails, but could also put permanent wiring over to the structure instead of having extension cords hanging down, looped across the sidewalk or laying on the ground or something like that, where we can get lighting out to those things. So I'm just asking for consideration that the businesses that have these areas that can continue with them, that are going to ask for a permit and pay that permit, have some sort of fee adjustment for at least the initial infrastructure, you might say, of what we'd need to put out. I'm not talking about decorations and paint. I'm talking about building a structure attached to somewhere, someplace. In my case, it would be the K-rails. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker card is for Dale Morgan.
I didn't know I was going to have to speak tonight, but as you must know, the food industry has really been affected, and it has affected the restaurant industry to the effect that in Los Angeles over 100,000 restaurants are no longer in business. When we got started with this sidewalk patio operation, we were never told that we would have to be paying $8 a month for rent. And we have invested thousands of dollars, because the first one, plus the winds that have taken place, cost us to lose our tent and everything else, and we went out and had to do it all over again recently. So we have gone through tremendous expenses, and the restaurant industry is really a tough one today. We have had to change our menus over and over again. We cannot buy food on a regular basis. We go out one day and it's one price, and the next week the price has gone up. I'm sure you've all had experience. We feel that, and when we started this, we were not told we would have to pay rent for this. So now we're looking at $8, and we would appreciate it if you would consider reducing it, because I don't know how we're going to continue to do it. And that's what I'd like to tell you. It's been a terrible time.
Can you remind us what your restaurant is, please?
Pardon me?
Can you remind us what your restaurant is?
Where it is?
What it is?
Oh, Nano Cafe.
Okay, Nano Cafe, thank you.
Yes. But the whole industry has been affected. And I mean, there isn't a week that goes by that the food isn't changed in prices, and we can't even get certain things, and it's been a terrible time. So if you would consider at least lowering the price for us, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the third speaker card we received is for Peggy Simonian.
Hello, good evening. I'm Peggy Simonian. I'm the owner of Lucky Baldwin's here in Kirsten Court. And first of all, I do want to say that the City of Patio Madre did an excellent job in helping us set up our outdoor dining and helping us during such a difficult time. I do have 2 other locations in Pasadena where we do have an outdoor dining patio there also. So we do have experience with having to pay rent. But what I would ask is, from the owner of Nano, she's correct in saying that the prices, the experiences that we are still having current experiences now. Although we are open for business, but we are still dealing with the price of food going up and down every week. It's different. We are constantly changing our menus, having to make adjustments. We've got labor issues. So there's still issues for us now, even though restaurants are open. One thing I would like to say in this meeting is that if the cost, I understand that there has to be a permit cost, but if it could be a bit more reasonably priced per square foot, that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simonian. Other public comments?
Can I ask her a quick question?
Sure.
So you said you had locations in Pasadena, is that right? And did you approach the city of Pasadena, and did they do anything to help cover, current costs or initial costs or first year costs or reduce the price?
They did waive the permits during the pandemic. They waived those fees, I think, for a year, and that was it.
Okay.
There wasn't anything else that I asked for, because we already had current patio dining already in place, so it wasn't that they had to do anything extra for us.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the council. Yes, Councilmember Reeves.
Mr. City Attorney, can you give us a little bit more on the difference between the permit fee versus the price per square foot? Because I'm hearing sort of different things, and my understanding was that the permit fees were to cover cost only, but that wasn't necessarily a limitation with respect to the per square foot charge.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember. It really depends on what right is being granted. And so if we're granting some regulatory right that pertains to private property, in that case, the city is limited to its costs. The city can't make a profit. But if the city is essentially renting out public property and is acting as a competitor in the marketplace, it could charge market price, and it could use those funds for any purpose it chooses. And in this case, if we're dealing with sidewalks, then those funds can be used for any purpose the city chooses, and it's not limited to only charging staff's cost.
So it seems to me that every tier of this program involves public property. I mean, other than obviously people using their own property, I guess tier one.
Yeah, right.
But there does seem to be a difference between, the position we're taking on the permitting fees for the sidewalk versus the per square foot for the patios that extend into the parking space. And do we view that, and it's probably not a question for the city attorney, but do we view that as different because of the encroachment on the parking, and that's why there's a difference in the fee structure?
Maybe get Director Semino up here to take that one.
So what we took into consideration with the patios on the street is the parking issue, taking up the parking there. But with the $8 per square foot, we were taking in consideration that we're enhancing that business's dining area and we're improving their business, or the landlord, the property owner of that business, we're improving their property values also. So it was a way of leasing the city's land, so we're not giving anything away to them.
So can I follow up on that? So the rate that you guys have calculated, is that hard and fast? Is there a formula that you could share with us how you arrived at it?
It wasn't. We just did it based on comparing to what other cities are charging.
So it's somewhere in line with those.
Yeah, if we did a market value analysis of what it costs for a dining room versus the patio, I mean, we don't know where that would come from. It'd be quite hard for us.
Mayor, if I may add, the analysis we did, we found that the fees for per square footage range from $6 to $14 in neighboring and competing cities. Staff recommended $8 on the lower side, realizing that Sierra Madre downtown is prime real estate. We chose to go on the lower side with the $8.
That's good to know. Thank you, Director Semino.
The top end of that was 15, you said?
16. So in a sense, in the calculation of this, we're actually under market in terms of the rates.
Correct.
Okay. Well, what do you think, folks?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Councilmember Crees. I would like to say that I am definitely in favor of the idea of reducing initial, first year fees if there needs to be, improvements done by the property owner. I think that's a fair compromise. I do think that the city should, be compensated for, essentially leasing space, just like any other property owner would be compensated for leasing space. But I do think it's fair, especially given the sequence of events here and the fact that most of these patios probably need to be replaced or significantly improved at this point. So I would definitely be in favor of that, but I do think a fair rental rate makes sense, given that we are essentially providing a benefit, to the businesses.
So how do you see the trade-off there in terms of their investment in improvement versus our lowering the rate? Where are you on that?
Well, I think I would be in favor of the recommended rate, but then also taking into consideration reducing the initial fee by the amount required by the business to invest into a new or an improved infrastructure.
Other thoughts?
Can I make sure I understand that? It's an interesting concept. So what you're saying is that the restaurant owner would provide proof of what they've invested in, and that would come off the first year's fees or something like that? Or is it, I mean, we can defer to staff on it, but I wanna make sure I understand your
Yeah,
concept.
yeah, I mean, the idea would be that there would be a reduction or, you know, whether it's dollar for dollar or whether it's some other, you know, some other reduction factor, I'm not too wedded to one or the other, but the idea being that there would be an offset in the amount charged to allow for the initial improvement of the patio area.
Rather than like waiving fees or anything, I really like Councilmember Krieb's idea is to be able to look at it as what you're putting in is reducing the fee. You know, kind of a tax rebate type of approach. I don't know if that's technically the right term, but.
Right. So could we, first like to get comments from other, Councilmember Arizmendi, do you have a thought on this?
Yeah, and I think, you know, I don't think the intent is for the city to make revenue out of this, right? I think we want to do what we can to assist businesses. I think, you know, given that we're looking at a standard design across the board and there's an expectation that business owners will have to build it to the specs that we put forward, that is not a cost that they anticipated, right? Just as we budget for things, I'm sure it's not a cost that they budget for, an expense that they budget for. So I think looking at the first year as kind of the ramp up will be helpful for the businesses. You know, I know we looked at the cost as in comparison to other cities. I just want to make sure that, again, it's not, well, I'd like to reassure our business owners that it's not, again, a way for us to generate revenue, but it's a way for us to be able to help maintain the area. I hear Councilmember Krieb saying that, you know, this is, it's city land and you know, it's fair to lease it out. And I'm fine with that, but again, with the thought that we are going to be using those dollars to help maintain the area. And the reason I asked about staffing is because staffing is a part of maintaining it also. But I think year one, I think we can ramp it up and whether it is some type of credit we can provide or if there's assistance, like you know, we don't have a loan program, but we've had experience with that with some of the federal dollars that came through. If that is something that we can consider. I don't have a magic number as to what a reduction a reduced amount is per square foot, but again, year one, I think we can, I'm support of reducing, or I don't know if eliminating, but reducing the cost for year one so that we can allow businesses to use those dollars or, you know, find a way to finance what they need to build out. And then secondly, if there's a way to look at a reduction of that cost overall, I think that would be something I'd consider also.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'm of like mind, especially if, hearing the comments from Mr. Rogers. You know, as long as it's structural for that first year, some type of program where it's either a rebate or a reduction in the lease cost that's based upon structural, not decorative. Obviously, some of the structure can be decorative, but it's meant for specific purpose on a case-by-case basis. I'm okay with that. We still have to remember, and I was in the restaurant business for a little while as far as being a manager at a bar and a restaurant, so I am familiar with a lot of the cost structure and things that happen within the restaurant business. But I think we kind of have to keep sight of why this program started in the first place. It wasn't to expand restaurant square footage, it was to help them through this pandemic, which, by the way, we're kind of still in, right? So some people are still uncomfortable going inside, so I'm okay with kind of relaxing some of the fees still. But as we kind of go forward, we do have to realize that the spirit of this program, how it started, but we like it and we want to keep it around. So I think that it is fair to pay some type of fee.
So if I'm hearing this right, so we could send this back to staff and you could perhaps come back to us with a proposed formula, or maybe are you prepared to do that tonight?
Mayor, I think we're prepared to do that tonight. What I'm hearing is we can reduce the first year or offset the first year up to the full permit amount based on the amount spent to update the patio.
So I don't know if it's the permit amount, but rather the lease fee, right?
Right.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about. Are we all good with that?
I'm good with it.
Do we need to take a formal vote on this, or can we just give you direction?
I think we need to take a formal vote.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the proposal by Councilmember Krebs on the patio dining program.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Were you aye? I didn't hear you, Councilmember Mindy. Was she aye?
Oh, because I whispered aye.
Oh, okay, okay.
Mr. Mayor,
So yes.
do we need to ask, do we need an official, vote on approving the actual manual? Cause I noticed there were two separate items on the
Yes, don't we?
staff report.
Pretty sure we do.
Okay, on that note, then I would move to approve the program manual with the changes necessitated by the prior vote.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that one carries unanimously as well. I think you guys have what you need, right? Great, that brings us to the end of the agenda. I would like to agendize, and I'd like to solicit other ideas for agenda items in the future. I would like to agendize the discussion of upgrading the Lizzie's and the Richardson House. Are there any other ideas for future agenda items? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Everyone.
I didn't mean to jump on you.
Oh, no, it was fine. No, it's always like.